other cases, it's just not a case that I would remember, that kind of, the specifics of the case.
It's interesting in supporting your vast experience. You shared with us these asides or these past experiences and presenting yourself as an expert in pattern recognition. And it's interesting that when I'm asking for these details that support this general point, you can't remember.
Objection, Your Honor. Argument.
Yeah, so, counsel,
Yes.
that's okay. In Massachusetts, typically, we don't give the reason for objections from the floor. Your objection sustained, no commentary, Mr. Brennan.
You shared with the court that you wrote a few articles that had to do with dog bites.
Co-authored, yes.
Can I ask you some questions about those?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, the first one I want to talk about is law enforcement canine dog bites. Do you remember that article?
Yes.
And that had to do with what you refer to as law enforcement dogs or canines.
Yes.
In that article, you talk specifically about a technique that you believe law enforcement or canine dogs utilize, which is bite and hold.
Yes.
And what you have suggested is that the bite and hold technique is different than typically a domestic dog or a civilian dog.
Yes.
Because it's a trained learning for the dog, correct?
Yes.
There are certain injuries you would expect from a canine dog using a bite and hold technique.
Yes.
When you wrote this, or co-authored this article, you didn't actually sit down with people who had wounds and compare the wounds to the dog that caused them, did you?
To the actual dog?
Yes.
I didn't, but I didn't.
Just want to know if you did.
No.
Okay. And when you looked at these different cases, there was 700 cases. This was what you called or the authors called a retrospective analysis.
Correct. That
That means you were looking back at old files.
Yes, but I participated in some of those files. We were just looking back at the data from those files. I participated in the care of some of those patients.
I understand.
Okay.
And so when you went through the files, you didn't have the opportunity then to follow up and speak to any of the participants or the injured victims, did you?
I spoke to many of the victims while I was treating them.
When you decided to write this article, did you go back and speak to anybody?
No.
There's no mention in this article about pattern recognition in any way. That's not what this article was about, was it?
No, that's not what the article's about.
It was about something entirely different than what you've suggested today as your pattern recognition skills. Yes?
That's correct. I recognized the patterns because I saw the wounds and I saw the injuries and I saw them over and over and over again. And I recognized those patterns throughout my career. And so it's hard to unrecognize something.
I'm trying to ask you about the significance of your study because this is actually something that you published.
Yes.
And I'm trying to determine, or I want you to be able to discuss the relevancy of this article to what you're testifying today. So the really narrow question I have for you is, in this study, it had nothing to do with trying to engage in pattern recognition.
The purpose of the study was not to teach people pattern recognition. It was to alert them to the dangers of this different type of dog bite so that they weren't under-treating them. But in the process of seeing all those patients, I developed the pattern recognition.
Okay. And so there was another article, Managing Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites in the Emergency Department.
Yes.
Now that only comprised of 4 cases, yes?
It was a case description.
Of 4 cases?
Yes.
And do you know most studies usually include over 30 cases?
It's not a study.
I see. You reviewed types of injuries relative to civilian or domestic dogs, or just canine?
Those were canine dogs.
And again, your position is that the injuries by canine dogs, law enforcement dogs, are different in kind than domestic or civilian dogs?
In general, when they bite and hold, those injuries are different. Sometimes they don't get a complete bite.
And so this article didn't deal with civilian or domestic dogs, it dealt with only canine dogs.
That's correct.
Exclusively on the idea or the perspective of bite and hold injuries.
It was on the perspective of you need to learn how to treat these
Bite and hold injuries.
dog bite injuries.
Bite and hold.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Now, again, in this article, there was no effort to identify wounds or use pattern analysis. It was the treatment of bite and hold injuries from canines,
That's correct.
law enforcement canines. Yes?
Yes, yes.
And then you also shared with us, in addition to these 2 articles on law enforcement dogs and bite and hold injuries, that you did some revising, editing of a book for a Dr. Is it Vati?
I'm sorry, say again?
You said that you revised or edited a book of a
Dr.
friend.
Vail.
Dr. Vail, I'm sorry, Dr. Vail. And when you were asked about what actually you recall about the topics, you don't really remember the topics of that book, you just remembered you edited it?
No, I remember the topics of the
Okay.
book.
In the topics of the book, it was dealing with human teeth, wasn't it?
Yes, but in the article itself, if you read it, there's mention about dog dentition.
Like there's a mention of it.
Yes.
Tell us what that mention was.
Well, the mention is that the dog dentition looks different and dog bites look different because of the triangular shape of the dog's mouth versus a rounded shape of the human's mouth.
Well, when they talk about the shape of a dog's mouth, it's not really triangular, it's like an hourglass.
Well, but that was the quote. Those were the words that were used in the article, and it's relative triangular shape. It's as opposed to a round shape of a human.
Well, in most studies, professional studies by experts, isn't it routinely referred to as an hourglass shape?
I haven't seen that at all.
Well, have you read books on dog bites?
I've read articles on dog bites.
Have you read books on dog bites?
No, I have read articles on dog bites.
Have you ever read this book? Do you recognize this as an authority?
No.
No?
So for the record, you need to say what you just showed the
I'm
witness.
showing Dr. Russell a book called Dog Bites, a Multidisciplinary Perspective, edited by Daniel S. Mills. Never,
Is that it? I'm sorry, may I see it?
if the court would let me, of course. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't mention if any of these people have degrees of
I'm
any.
sorry, Your Honor, I don't believe a question's pending.
Sorry, Mr. Alessi, I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. I don't believe a question
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
pending for the witness.
Okay, are you moving to strike that?
Yes, I am.
All right, I'll strike that. So, Doctor, I know it's been a long day. Wait for a question, please, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Are you done reviewing the book?
Yes.
You've, through your testimony, attempted to or suggested there's a distinction between canine law enforcement wounds and that of domestic.
Yes,
But domestic dogs can cut the skin,
correct.
cause serious injury,
Yes,
deep wounds.
they can.
It's not just that domestic dogs just nip around the corners. They can bite,
They can.
they can attack,
Yes,
they can kill.
yes,
You've seen it firsthand.
yes. No, I didn't witness the attack, no.
Do you doubt that it was a canine attack?
No, I didn't witness the attack myself.
Oh, I understand.
Firsthand is what you said.
Okay. You made a firsthand observation of a dog bite in the 1970s when you were at a training,
Yes,
and one of the participants was bit.
yes.
Now, you said you didn't remember the wound. Do you have any memory of looking at what happened after a dog actually bit somebody firsthand?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow it's cross-examination on our based on our testimony.
Say again? Any question?
Should I repeat, Doctor?
Yes, please.
Do you have any memory of what you saw of when a dog actually bit somebody, your first-hand observation?
From 50 years ago, no.
Right. When people came in the emergency room, you didn't actually see the bites or the mechanics of it happening. You're treating it after they come and ask you for aid.
That's correct.
Did you ever, in any of those emergency room experiences, go and see the dog?
No.
Did you ever have any other information about the dog, photographs, pictures, anything like that?
Well, I did have other information about the dog.
Oh, give me an example. Tell me.
Well, we had to fill out a dog bite report after a dog bite's requirement in Los Angeles County. So, although most doctors don't have the time to do it, I tried to comply with that rule. So I would question the victim, try to find out the address of the dog if they knew it. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But I tried to get as much information as I could.
Did you ever get any photographs?
No.
So it was just reporter information from the person who's coming for treatment or somebody that was assisting them?
Yes.
Okay. You provided a CV in this case, didn't you?
Yes.
In your CV, you list out some of your pertinent history and experience.
Yes.
Subsequent to your CV, you wrote a report and you signed it on the 9th of December, 2024.
Yes.
And it was provided to the Commonwealth, on December 10th, 2024, 2 days ago.
Yes.
There were a number of things that you offered in that report regarding your suggested experience that are just not in your CV. Isn't that fair to say?
That could be, yes. Of course, you can't put everything in the CV.
Well, you didn't say anything really about dog bite experience in your CV other than your 2 articles, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And you didn't mention anything about this specialized training or expertise in pattern recognition analysis. You didn't mention anything about that in your CV, did you?
Can't mention everything.
I didn't ask if you could mention anything. I'm asking if you mentioned that.
Well, it says brief CB on the top.
Okay. I'll ask you again.
Okay.
Did you mention anything in your CV about pattern recognition analysis in your described expertise in that?
No.
In your report, and let me ask you before we get to your report, you testified at a voir dire in this case?
Yes.
About a year ago?
Less than that.
And you then testified at trial?
Yes.
Okay. When you testified in the voir dire and trial, and in your CV, you don't mention the scores of peer review articles on dog bites that you studied, do you?
Ask that question.
I'm sorry. When you testified 2 times before,
Yes.
did you talk about the scores, as you describe it, of peer review articles that you've studied on dog bites?
On the numbers of period. No, I didn't mention that. That's correct.
Okay, and that's not mentioned in your CV either,
You don't usually mention it in your CV about the articles you read.
but I'm asking if you did.
Oh, no, I wouldn't mention that in my CV.
Okay, so let's talk about it now since you didn't mention it. You read scores of peer-reviewed articles on dog bites.
Throughout my career, yes.
Let's talk about the peer-reviewed articles that you've studied on pattern recognition analysis of dog bites. Could you please give me a list of those peer-reviewed articles that you studied?
I don't think there are any.
Well, you
There are some mentions of pattern recognition in some articles. However, I don't think there's a dedicated article on pattern recognition of dog bites.
You said in your report that you reviewed scores of peer-reviewed articles on dog bites.
Dog bites, yes.
Okay, so those didn't really include pattern recognition as you've described your expertise today.
Some of them did, some of them didn't, but that might not have been the major focus of the article.
Which ones did? Can you reference us the ones that you've read and relied upon, in your opinion today, that have to do with pattern recognition analysis?
May I look at my report or my CV?
Sure.
Of course.
Sure. Go ahead and take your time, Doctor.
Thank you. Okay, there is, and they might not have used the term pattern recognition, but that's what they're talking about in these articles.
Okay.
There is a article by D. Muniak. It's actually listed in my report under literature.
Okay. I see it.
It's the third one. Yes.
And that deals with pattern recognition analysis?
It's part of the article. There was a lot more in the article than just pattern recognition. And again, they might not have used that specific term, pattern, but it's what the subject was discussed in the middle of the article, yes.
What was discussed in this article that you relied upon?
Oh, I relied on the descriptions of wounds. I relied on a lot of this article.
Well, share with us in detail. Could you tell us what you relied on in that article as part of your opinion?
There was a description, there was an area that described wounds and fatal wounds in dog bites, and how to approach them, how to investigate them. There was an area that described what some of these wounds looked like. Mm-hmm. And there was actually an area that I believe it was this article that said that if you have this plus this plus this, that it is pathognomonic for a dog bite. Now, I believe that was the article that said that. One of these articles did, but anyways, so yeah. So I think maybe you might want to look at them.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you.
Okay.
And so I'm confused about which one you're talking about.
There was not a recipe book that said, okay, this is the pattern of a dog bite.
Mm-hmm.
It might, they might not get a lot of readers for that, but this was a forensic approach as to how to identify fatal dog attacks.
So from your resume, Doctor, could you tell me which article you're talking about?
I'm talking about the third one down.
What's the title?
The title of the article is Forensic Approach of Fatal Dog Attacks, a Case Report and Literature Review.
Okay.
Fatal dog attacks oftentimes involve vulnerable areas like the neck,
Absolutely.
abdomen.
Neck, face, head, yes. Sometimes the abdomen, yes.
Okay. No cases cited in there that deal with wounds on an arm.
Because it's a fatal...
Right.
Right. But that doesn't mean that there weren't wounds on the arm. It's that the fatal wounds, like in the case I autopsied, the fatal wounds generally were in the areas that had organs that could be damaged, like or major vessels like a carotid artery, neck. But there could be a lot of other wounds. For instance, my case, there was probably about 60 wounds.
I understand.
Okay, but some of you're not going to talk about every single one of them because they're not worthy of describing.
Okay. You said that you attended multiple seminars, talks, and lectures regarding wound identification.
Yes.
Okay. When did you attend seminars on wound identification?
Intermittently throughout my career. I can't give you any dates.
Okay. Were any of those wound identifications dog bite wound identification seminars?
No, they were general wound identifications, and they may mention bites.
Okay. Was there any of these seminars that focused on dog bite wounds?
That focused on dog bite wounds?
Yes.
No.
How about the talks you went to? Any of the talks focus on dog bite wounds?
There were several talks that focused on bite wounds.
I'm going to ask again. Were there any talks that focused on dog bite wounds?
No.
Lectures. You've cited that you've attended lectures as part of this experience. Can you recall specific lectures that focused on dog bite wounds?
Not entire lectures. There were